Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Magic Pill Monday, where we talk about all kinds of supplements to see if they are worth buying based on science or if they're going to be a waste of money. And today we're talking about betaine, which is also an unknown longevity molecule, and I'm going to show you exactly in this video why that is. Now, betaine is also sometimes known as trimethylglycine, so if you ever see something that is called TMG or trimethylglycine, they're talking about betaine. Now you also see a picture of beets on the first slide, and the reason is that betaine was first found in beets, and that is also why it's called betaine. So that is where the name comes from. Now, typical dosages used in studies are 1.5 to 6 grams per day for a wide range of benefits, such as workout performance, longevity, and also, interestingly enough, a dry mouth. Now, you can get betaine from food, for example, wheat germ or spinach, in okay amounts, but if you want to get those 1.5 to 6 grams per day, it is quite impractical to try and get those from food alone. So supplementation seems to be necessary. Before I move on with this video, usually these videos can be quite long because I dive deep into the science, so I encourage you just to jump around to whatever part of the video you find interesting. I'm going to put the timestamps in the description to make it very easy for you to jump to any spot you find interesting, and feel free to do that. Now, before I can talk about the benefits of betaine for longevity, I have to quickly explain what is homocysteine and why it matters. So homocysteine is just a compound that is created in a body as a result from eating protein. When we eat high protein foods, those proteins are actually a combination of amino acids. And one of those amino acids is known as methionine. Some foods that are high in methionine are, for example, beef, tofu, or tuna. When the methionine comes into the body, some of it is converted to homocysteine. And actually, it can also be converted back from homocysteine into methionine. Now, why does this matter? Well, it seems from research that homocysteine could be a risk factor for heart disease. So we don't want this homocysteine to be too high in our body. And there are several mechanisms in the body that are trying to control and balance the levels of homocysteine and convert it back into, for example, methionine or cysteine, as you can see on the picture right here. Now, one of the mechanisms to transfer homocysteine back into methionine uses folate. And this folate cycle needs a certain enzyme called MTHFR. And as it turns out, 30 to 40% of people have a certain DNA mutation that is causing them some issues with this MTHFR enzyme and this cycle right here. And as a result, it is difficult for them to convert homocysteine back in methionine, and these people typically have higher levels of homocysteine, therefore potential increased risk of heart disease. So this is where betaine comes in, because actually, as you can see on this picture, homocysteine can also be converted back into methionine using betaine. So you are actually helping this conversion right here to go more efficiently. So by supplementing betaine, you can actually lower or control the homocysteine levels better, especially if you have this specific mutation where this cycle is impaired. How do you know if you have this DNA mutation where you have problems with this MTHFR enzyme? The way I did it is I did a DNA test at a company called 23andMe. And once you finish that DNA test, you have your full DNA genome in a file that you can then upload to other websites where they can do certain analyses on your genetics. And I used the Found My Fitness website for that. And I got some sort of report. And indeed, as you can see, I do have this genetic mutation where it says here, increased risk for hyperhomocysteinemia. In other words, I do have problems with this cycle right here. And as a result, I have a higher risk of having high levels of homocysteine in the body. So there are some studies that show that homocysteine can increase the risk of heart disease. For example, here we have a study that says higher genetically predicted circulating homocysteine levels were associated with an increased risk of stroke. And another study says elevations in homocysteine were considered an independent graded risk factor for atherosclerotic vascular diseases. A total of 10% of the population's cardiovascular disease risk appears attributable to homocysteine. So that sounds pretty convincing that homocysteine can increase the risk of heart disease. However, I do think it should be mentioned that there are also studies who seem to say that homocysteine does not cause heart disease. For example, this study says, taken together, the data suggest that homocysteine is a marker rather than a cause of cardiovascular disease, and they therefore do not provide support for routine screening for and treatment of elevated homocysteine to prevent cardiovascular disease. So overall, if you look at the science, most studies do seem to suggest that homocysteine is at least correlated with the risk of increased heart disease. But we are not sure yet if homocysteine is a cause or if maybe it is raised for some other reasons. However, before we have figured out this issue in science, it seems to be beneficial to supplement betaine in order to facilitate this conversion from homocysteine to methionine and keep our homocysteine levels in check. So the first benefit now makes a lot of sense. Now we explained that because the main benefit of betaine is reducing homocysteine. And there are many studies that show this. For example, this study in 34 healthy men and women taking 1, 3, or 6 grams of betaine for 4 weeks. And we see a significant increase in homocysteine. And in this other study, where there are 19 healthy men and women taking, again, several different dosages of betaine for 6 weeks, they also saw a significant decrease in homocysteine. So the idea here is that because betaine keeps homocysteine in check, you might see an increase in lifespan because you're reducing your risk of cardiovascular disease, especially if you have that genetic mutation. Now, there are more studies in the description that do show similar benefits if you are interested, but I believe you get the idea right now. The second benefit of betaine is that it might be able to increase workout performance. So in this study, we have 13 healthy men taking 2.5 grams of betaine for 2 weeks. And the kind of test they are doing in this research is 10 sets of bench press to failure. And it shows the following: an increase in total repetitions and total volume load in the 10-set bench press protocol was noted with betaine supplementation, with values increasing approximately 6.5%. So in this study, we see definitely an increase in performance in the bench press as a result of supplementing betaine. In the second study, we're looking at 43 CrossFit practitioners taking 2.5 to 5 grams of betaine per day for 2 weeks. And they were doing a specific workout called Fight Gone Bad and another sort of test called the Wingate Power Test. And the differences they saw was that they saw almost a 9% increase in the performance in that specific CrossFit test, but no increase in the Wingate Power Test. And interesting, they also saw an increase in testosterone. Now, also important to mention, in this study, they saw no difference between the dosages. So 2.5 grams of betaine was just as good as 5 grams. Now, you might wonder, what is Fight Gone Bad? So Fight Gone Bad is basically a sort of circuit CrossFit style training. You can see here on the screen, it contains all kinds of different exercises such as sumo deadlifts and push press and box jumps in a specific order. Wingate Power Test is a 30-second test typically done on a bike where a person just has to go all out for 30 seconds, giving maximum power on the bike. So just to go back, they saw an increase in the performance in this Fight Gone Bad workout, but not in that cycling test. The third study here, we have 23 experienced subjects, so people that already did some training, and they were taking 2.5 grams of betaine for 6 weeks, and they saw an increase in the arm cross-sectional area, so bigger arms. Bench stress training volume significantly improved, and they also saw an improvement in body composition, so better body fat percentage, less fat mass, and more lean body mass, in other words, muscle. So again, great results when it comes to betaine supplementation. And finally, we have another group here, 29 healthy men and women taking 2.5 grams for 6 weeks. And the results showed that muscle strength during the back squat significantly increased in the betaine group, but not in the placebo group. However, it should be mentioned that actually in this study, the changes were very small and there were several metrics were tested, but no other changes were found between the placebo group and the betaine group. So even though most of the results seem positive in terms of betaine supplementation, there are also studies that show almost no result whatsoever. So it's important for us to remain critical and wait for more research to come out. The third benefit that I already alluded to in the introduction is that betaine can help with a dry mouth. So in this study, we are looking at 27 serostomic patients. So these are patients that are suffering from specific situations where they have a very dry mouth. And they were testing 3 different toothpastes with 3 different ingredients added. So in the first one, you have 4% betaine. In the second one, you have 1% SLS and 4% betaine. And in the third one, you have 1% SLS. So what they found in the study is that betaine was on its own the most effective in reducing dry mouth symptoms, with about a 44% reduction in the measure they were using. So that is a pretty significant reduction. Now, I put more studies in the description if you're interested in the subject. but it is very niche and I just thought it was interesting to mention, and I don't see a reason to go into it any further than that. So the final benefit worth mentioning about betaine is that it has the ability to strengthen the stomach acid. So in this study, they were giving people 1500 milligrams of betaine HCl, and what they measured was that the stomach acid pH level, so that's the level of acidity, went from 5.2 to 0.6 in less than 30 minutes. Now, the lower this pH is, the more acidic your stomach acid is. So the stomach acid became significantly more acidic in just less than 30 minutes. Moreover, the pH remained under 3 for 73 minutes after supplementation. This could definitely be beneficial for people having digestive problems, because sometimes these digestive problems are related to not having strong enough stomach acid, and just taking this supplement can definitely help with that. So how about risks and downsides for betaine? Well, some studies show that betaine may be able to raise cholesterol levels in the body. So some people may be worried that betaine can increase the risk of heart disease. However, studies have shown that this is not the case. Here we have a study that actually combines many studies on the topic. We call that a systematic review and meta-analysis. And in this study, where they look at all research combined, they found that incident cardiovascular disease was not associated with choline or betaine intake. So you can be quite assured that betaine is not going to increase your risk of heart disease. And we are not sure what it is doing with cholesterol, but it doesn't seem to be harmful in any way. Now, another interesting potential side effect of betaine is called the fish odor syndrome. And this can happen when you have very high dosages of betaine, or actually choline as well. So if you take very high dosages of these nutrients, you can develop this syndrome. And the reason is that one of the metabolites of betaine has this odor as side effect. So if you produce a lot of these metabolites, you can actually produce so much of this odor that people can start to notice it. But again, the dosages need to be very high, way higher than the dosages that people typically supplement. So it's not really something to worry about that much. Regarding dosage and quality, people typically take 1.5 to 6 grams per day in research, and there's no toxic upper limit established. So potentially you could take even more than 6 grams, but there's really no reason to do that. All the scientifically proven benefits are from research that stay within this 1.5 to 6 grams per day range. Now, if you are looking to increase the strength of your stomach acid, you should use betaine HCl. That one seems to be specifically useful for raising the acidity of your stomach acid. Now, for all other purposes, you can take any form of betaine. So that can be betaine HCl, but it can also be betaine anhydrous. So this is also a very common form of betaine. And of course, you can look for DMG, which is just another name for betaine that is often used. So when should you take betaine? Well, since it can raise the stomach acid, it's best to take it with or before meals, so it can actually help you with the digestion. So final verdict on betaine, I would give betaine a 7.5 out of 10. It is a very safe supplement and quite cheap as well, actually. You're not likely to get any sort of side effects from using this supplement. It is great for people with the MTHFR gene, and those are like already 30 to 40% of people on the planet. It has a potential longevity effect, and it can boost the workout performance. So all in all, I think this makes betaine a very great supplement. However, I do also think it needs more studies. The main benefit seems, of course, to be reducing homocysteine levels, but we're actually not sure yet if homocysteine is a cause of heart disease or simply a marker that is correlated with heart disease. Also, I feel like there are still enough studies that show a benefit, and then 1 or 2 studies that show no benefit. So we need more studies to convincingly show that betaine is a useful supplement. So overall, right now, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. That was it for betaine. If you enjoyed this content, please leave a like on the video. It really helps me out a ton. And if you want to see more, just subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments what you want to see from me, and I'll try to make your requests become a reality. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.